All right, good day and welcome back to WEDCOnomics, a podcast brought to you by Wentworth Economic Development Corporation. I'm Jack Terrill. I'm the Executive Director of WEDCO, as we call it. And we are in the business, we're a 501c3 nonprofit in the business of advising, financing, and promoting the small business sector here in the Eastern Lakes region of New Hampshire. And as you know, or don't know, we do this podcast and we try and kind of focus in on small business and the things that are important to small businesses and their success. And we like to highlight some of those success stories as well. Today, we have Ed Miles from Small Business Development Center. Ed, welcome.
Thanks, Jack.
Such a good sport, those SBDC people. We had, if you remember, Kyla Brewston early on in the season, and she and I talked about how it would be cool to really kind of dig into the importance of a business plan. And Ed has been good enough to be the stand-up guy and come up here, and we are going to do exactly that. The title of the show is Plan Your Work, Work Your Plan, and we're going to kind of do a top 10 for business plans that Ed has compiled. First of all, let's learn a little bit about you, Ed.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jack. So I am Ed Miles. I am the Seacoast Regional Director for the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center, kind of a mouthful. I'm a New Hampshire native. Grew up in Rochester, live in Stratford now, and my background is, I would say, a little bit diverse. My education, I have an undergraduate degree in marketing. I have an MBA with a concentration in quantitative analysis, which sounds like I can launch rockets, right? But that's statistics. I worked in high tech for the majority of my professional career, I'd say, at a Fortune 500 company, and then at a venture capital funded startup. And then most recently, before I joined the SBDC, which is also a nonprofit now, in the private sector, I worked at a small manufacturer here in southern New Hampshire and helped them grow that business over a number of years. Joined the SBDC about 3 years ago. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, good, thanks. I'm glad to hear you're a New Hampshire native.
Yeah, spent a little bit of time in Florida, but kept our home here in New Hampshire while I was down there.
I mean, as a hilltopper from Somersworth, I can't say that we were real thrilled with the Rochester schools, but we had quite a rivalry back in the day. I don't know if it still exists.
Yeah, I think it does. Rochester, Dover, Somersworth, sort of. We call it the Tri-City area affectionately, but I think the schools do have a bit of a rivalry.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with Small Business Development Center, and what exactly do you do there?
So that's a good question, and I forgot one piece of, so I'm a full-time employee of the SBDC. I'm not a volunteer. This is what I do day in and day out, and the way that I got involved is, so the SBDC is an extension or an outreach service of the University of New Hampshire, and I was working at UNH as an adjunct instructor, which I still do now. It's my part-time job. I teach a couple classes at the business school there, the Paul College, and the SBDC needed some content on revenue generation. So my business background has always been sort of business development, top line revenue growth, sales is the best way to say it, and they asked me to create some content on revenue generation for small business. So the SBDC contracted me to create basically a PowerPoint that had an overlay of audio on it on revenue generation, and after I did that, they said, hey, it was during the pandemic back in mid 2020. They said, would you mind joining us to help with the demand that we have right now from so many small businesses trying to navigate what this new world looks like with idle relief funding from the SBA, the disaster relief loans, payroll protection, PPP was a big thing back then too. So many small businesses trying to navigate that. The demand on the SBDC was so great that they asked me to join part-time as a business advisor. So I kind of said, sure, I could try that. I was still working in the private sector in manufacturing, and I just kind of pulled that part-time gig up alongside my full-time gig, and eventually they said, hey, we have this opportunity for the Seacoast Regional Director job. Would you be interested in that? So I kind of jumped out of my private sector gig and joined full-time, I'd say a little over a year ago now, as the Seacoast Regional Director.
What was it that attracted you to make such a move? Because that wasn't a small move. That was a real commitment.
I think it was sort of, I guess maybe the stage of life that I was at in sort of, the SPD is very mission-driven as an organization and giving back to small business. And I guess they flattered me by asking me to create this content that I might have some wisdom to share with small businesses. So maybe that's what the attraction was, what they said, hey, you have more to offer here, and would you be willing to be trained as a certified business advisor and then share as a generalist, and not just sales, which is kind of my superpower, but learn about a bunch of different things to be sharing with small businesses. And I guess that was the attraction, just that stage of my life, and just getting to a point where already part of the UNH ecosystem, teaching as an adjunct part-time, I knew that becoming a bigger part of something that UNH had going on as an outreach service was a place I wanted to be into the future. So I think that was the attraction, the giving back factor, and just that being able to share some knowledge that I have from my private sector experience.
Cool. What are the courses you do teach at UNH?
So I teach in the business and practice program. So I'm categorized as an adjunct instructor, but I actually, in the business and practice program, they call it the BIP program at the Paul College. Those are business professionals sharing knowledge that they have from their private sector experience. So as a result, I teach a class called Productization and Market Segmentation is one of them. And then the other one I teach is Business Development and Strategic Sales. And those are both sort of self-developed curriculum that I teach in those two categories.
Cool. That's certainly mutually reinforcing to what you're doing today. So
Yeah.
Got yourself well aligned. That's nice.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, cool. Well, we WEDCO is very intertwined with the Small Business Development Center, and as I said earlier, we have really three legs of our stool: advising, financing, and promoting. And that advising side, we are deep in partnership with SBDC. Not just with Ed, but some of his other colleagues as well. We work with them because we find, that their advisory skills for somebody wanting to start a small business or wanting to grow a business, we find their advisory skills to be very strong, and so we're always confident when we recommend them to a client or potential client. But this is the weirdest part. The services don't cost anything. They're free to the client. So, I mean, how do you go wrong with that?
Yeah, and I always thought at some point I might like to maybe be a business consultant, but this allows me to do that. And like you said, it's the benefactors are the small businesses in the state of New Hampshire, and we're just employed to be able to help them out.
The benefactors are the people that are starting those small businesses or growing those small businesses. So it's an excellent service, and we like our partnership and look forward to impacting more and more people as we go. I mean, that's kind of why we're in business and why SBDC is in business. So, enough with the pleasantries. Let us drill down on plan your work your plan. So, you've heard me, those that have seen this podcast, talk about the importance of business plans, and we're really going to drill down on that today and in the next episode, because it's really a critical piece to the success or the potential success for a new business. So let me get your thoughts on that, Ed. How important is a business plan and why?
All right, so now we're getting down to it. So business plans, I was just checking my email on my way in this morning, kind of walking and scrolling, and I'm getting business plans from small businesses that are, for a variety of reasons, I'd say they send them to me to edit them and provide feedback. I'd say the number one reason that a small business creates a business plan is when they're trying to access capital, either for startup or for growth. And that's the number one reason. But I'd say the second reason that I might see a business create a business plan is just for a general guidepost for the business. So it's not always that they're seeking to access capital, as I mentioned, but a lot of times it's we really want this internal guidepost for as we grow or as we start up that we can reference back and say, what do we want to be as a business? So I'd say those are the main two reasons.
Yeah, it's such a great tool to bring clarity to your thought processes, and in the nonprofit world, one of the real banes to our little world is what we call mission drift, which is when you start out as one thing, and then through the course of time and change, you sort of drift into something else, which may not be a bad thing, but oftentimes can be. And so to me, a business plan for-profit small businesses is a way to avoid the drift that can undermine your success.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about, we talk about quite often with small businesses, and once again, not just startup, but businesses that might be looking to grow or expand. I think a lot of the secret to success is becoming the go-to known expert in a certain thing. And I like how you put it, to call it drift. When you start to move away from that, then you start to broaden what you're doing. Then you're not appealing to a more specific audience. So irregardless of the industry you're in, as a product or a service, becoming a known go-to expert is something we talk about quite a bit. And once again, if you put it down on paper, then that's a business plan is a good place to tell yourself what you want to be as a business.
Yeah, so as they say, a mile wide and an inch deep, or
Right.
a mile deep and an inch wide.
Right.
But being that sort of go-to person means a lot to me as just a general consumer out there on whatever it is that I'm doing or buying or engaging in. I just want to know that the person I'm talking with is somebody I can entrust to know that they know the business that I'm dealing with, because I don't, right? It's impossible for us to know all aspects of all businesses.
Yeah, that's true.
So, well, good. We're going to go even a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about, I don't know if these are in any particular order, but we have compiled for this in the next episode sort of the 10 critical components to a business plan and why they're critical. So we'll start. Start with this one, Ed. Know your audience. Parentheses, don't assume that they know anything about your product, service, market. Can you expand on that?
Definitely. So once again, whether it's an internal guidepost as a business plan or if it's being created to access capital, you have to know who that audience is. So for example, if you're designing a business plan to get a loan with WEDCO or with a commercial lender, you want to be very specific on what you do. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that WEDCO or the commercial lender knows anything about what you do. So that's the first step, is don't make that assumption. And you're going to want to use language that is very specific to what you're trying to do. I am seeking capital for this purpose in the amount of around this timing. And that's you want to be very specific. And so that's the audience that would be WEDCO as a lender or to a commercial lending audience. So that'll be very different from something you might want to say internally even how you might draft your mission statement. You can have a very similar mission, but or the same mission for an internal document, but if you're trying to communicate to the employees about things that you might want to have influence over internally at the company, sort of like any sustainability, things like things that are really going deeper at a softer level of your mission. A bank's not as interested in that. They don't want to know that you want to change the world or something like. I mean, they do want specifics about maybe where you stand environmentally or related to diversity or things like that. And I'm not saying it's any less important, but for an audience that's going to be wanting to get down to what the understanding of what you're doing, for wanting some capital. I'm sure Jack would be interested in understanding, where you might like to change things in the world, but he's going to very specifically want to understand how much money you need, when you need it, and what the use of funds is going to be. That's very different than how you might draft an internal document.
So somebody starting a small business can have multiple audiences. Employees would be one audience. Financial institutions would be another audience. Perhaps regulators in the town is a third. You can, so one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
Your point was the language for one audience is not necessarily the language for a second audience.
And that's exactly right. I'm glad that you mentioned, municipality. Maybe you're drafting a mission as part of something you're trying to do environmentally within your community. That is the eyes of the municipalities are going to lay on that. It's very different than asking for money. So, and there can be different versions, and it can also be a living document, to use sort of a buzzword. It can be a document that into the future can be modified and edited, both to those audience and to how you might change as an organization.
Can and should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not designed to collect dust.
No.
But to go back, so number one, know your audience and know that, in fact, you could have multiple audiences, so adjust your language to that audience to have the clearest message.
And be very specific. Do not assume that they know anything about your business. You may think that the name of your business might imply what you do, but be very specific to if you're a product, if you're a service, if you're a brick and mortar location, and what you actually do as a company. So don't just assume that as people start to read it, you can be very, very specific about what the company is and what you do.
Very good. Did you get that, everybody? I'm taking notes, right? Or do I take the notes? Okay, let's go to a second point that you brought up, and I looked at it and said, well, sounds interesting. Create a clear title page. What? Where are you going with that?
So I've seen a lot of business plans. As I said, a few in my inbox just this morning from people that did work over the weekend and wanted me to review them. And if you think about structure and formatting of how you want to present the materials, the title page is just critical to opening it up. And usually it's as simple as name of the business plan, the owner's name, and their physical address, or their address that they're registered with, the state of New Hampshire for their business. So I would say that a clear title page, rather than jumping right into saying, we're looking for X amount of dollars in 2 months from now because we want to build or expand. I mean, that's not the way to start a business plan. The way to start a business plan is to have a very clear title page. A table of contents may or may not be required. At the SBDC, we actually have a template that we like to send out to small businesses that actually structures it with a title page that you can replace with your business name, a table of contents that you can replace with your content, and then it's very structured and can be followed along. But I think the title page is something that a lot of times gets skipped in my experience, and I just think it's a nice place to say the name of the business, the owner, and then your address, and if relevant, I guess a phone number as well.
So we'll have to remember to mention how they can access that template.
Yep, for sure, and that's
And how much you charge for using that template?
0. So, and I can, talk a little bit more about that, but yes, it's.
But
it's
okay, well, good. Well, that's hey, look, pay attention, folks. Pay attention. So, number 3, you thought it would be important for someone to create an executive summary, and why is that?
Yeah, so the executive summary, I think if you were to go online and search for a business plan template, you'd sometimes find an executive summary at the beginning, sometimes you find it at the end. I kind of prefer it towards the beginning of a business plan. And I think it is important, once again, I'm kind of being a little bit redundant in providing you why it's important, but I think it's important to state know your audience, and it's important to state within the executive summary what specifically you're drafting the business plan for. So I keep using the term internal guidepost. I don't know where I came up with that. But if it's specifically for the ownership and the management and the employees of a company, then you write that in the executive summary, and then you draft into that content that's at a very high level. An executive summary shouldn't be 2 pages. It should be 2 paragraphs at the most. I mean, it could be quite short. And I think that, again, if it's commercial lender or for WEDCO seeking capital, it's a place where you can very specifically say who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for, what the purpose of the business plan is.
Are you telling me, sir, that theoretically you could have one business plan with multiple executive summaries depending on who you are giving the plan to?
I would say yes. I mean, again, I think that
goes back to speaking
I'm going to go
your
back
audience.
to, and I'm not going to make any assumptions. So I read a business plan that somebody sends to me, a small business sends to me to review, sort of editorially. I try not to be academic. I try not to look at it as like my adjunct instructor role at UNH. I try to read it really all the way through with all the content, provide some, depending on what the need is, I can provide feedback on just sentence structure and punctuation and general wording, but mostly I'm looking at the content. So that's how I look at it. But if I were to say, and I'm making an assumption, I'm not sure, for example, that a commercial lender would look at it the same way. If I were in a commercial lending capacity, I'd probably see volumes and volumes more business plans in a given week or day even. I might look at the executive summary and flip right through to the financial projections. And that's really, if I'm going to use an opportunity to know that my audience, title page, executive summary, is going to read some content and then potentially flip all the way through the financial projections, that I want that to really be specific. So that's why I say, and the long answer to your question, I'd say yes. Executive summary is an area that you can have different versions for the different audiences.
And an executive summary can actually stop somebody from continuing on or make somebody continue on.
And that's a good point, because I would say that categorically, the lenders that we work with in the Seacoast region of New Hampshire, from my experience, they are trying to round out a portfolio of the type of lending they do. So they might look at something within a certain sector or vertical market and say, we're already heavy in this vertical market. I read this executive summary. I'm sure it's a great business plan, and they won't make any presumptions about of what the capability of lendability might be of the client, but they might read it and say, nope, that's not the category that we want to lend in. They might set it aside. So I think that you're exactly right. After that executive summary, they might not even go to the financial projection, because they could say, as a lender, we're already heavy in this vertical market, and they'll just set it aside. And I think it's a good point that we work very closely together with WEDCO within the region for your lending needs, and had some recent successes, which is exciting. But whenever we refer commercial lenders, we always refer at least 3 to the small businesses that we work with, because it could be that it's not that they're not bankable, for example. It just could be categorically that the bank may not be lending within that market.
Great. And so number 4, keep your mission and vision short. What does that mean?
So this is another area where, as you can imagine, you could just think of any idea you might have had to start a business and what the reason you might have wanted to do that. Oftentimes, the entrepreneurs that we're working with are following a passion. So a mission statement can tend to be a place where they might just pour out that passion into this document, where it should really be, I'm going to say, 2 sentences. I mean, not even 2 paragraphs like the executive summary.
Right.
It should really be condensed down to a very specific mission for what they're looking to do. So executive summary, talk about the business that you are, the reason for the plan. The mission statement should really very concisely say what drives you for your business. You want to convey that passion, but it shouldn't be, I've seen some mission statements, again, that are 2 pages long versus 2 sentences.
It's not a mission statement.
It's not a mission statement.
You should be able to say your mission statement in an elevator within a minute's time.
Yeah,
right?
they call it the elevator pitch. That's, again, sort of a buzzy word or phrase, but
it means something,
It
though.
means something, but what I like to say is if you bumped into somebody, I call it the produce pitch. If you bump into somebody at the grocery store and you're grabbing some produce in the produce section, and it's maybe an acquaintance or somebody you know from around town, they say, "Hey Jack, what are you up to now?" That's your produce pitch is what you would say. So it's same as an elevator pitch, but sometimes we're not in elevators a lot here in southern New Hampshire, but you're often at the produce section. So I call it the produce pitch.
Well, I that's fine. You
the same thing.
Patent it if you'd like. But that the simplification of mission can do so much, particularly if you have like a board of directors and they may be, well, they're not as engaged as you are because that's your job, and they're volunteers that come in and out of the organization to help govern it. But they really ought to be able to say what the mission is, and the more complicated that is, the less likely they'll be able to deliver a quick, succinct picture of that particular organization, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit. So, yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, number 5, and we're getting low on time. How does your product or service differentiate? Is it categorized as a new innovation, an improvement on current offering, a Me Too product or service? So can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
So now, yes, certainly, Jack. So now we're getting into more of the meat of the business plan. So when you are, there's going to be a section that's going to be product or service offering. And within that section, you want to very specifically say, this is a brand new innovation. It's never been done before. We have a patent on it, something like that. That's very specific, an innovation. Or this is an improvement upon something that you may have seen before, and you can even give examples of currently commercially available product or services that you're improving upon by what you're offering. Maybe you're delivering the mechanism in which you deliver it is different from something that's ever been seen before. Or this is a Me Too product. So it's something that's commonly available. You're very familiar with it. You maybe even use it on a daily basis or take advantage of this type of service on a regular basis. And the word differentiation is not that you're going to necessarily innovate upon something that's commonly available in our daily lives, but you're going to say, this is how we're going to differentiate ourselves from this other product or service that is also available out there. So it's a meatier area, that product and service description, but it's an area that gives you an opportunity to say, yeah, we're just like them, but we're going to do it this way. Or you may have know of a product like this before. Ours is new and improved, or this is something that's patented that you never heard of before, and that's an innovation.
So that differentiation, how you're saying that's important to differentiate yourself.
Yeah,
to separate yourself.
It is. It's very important, and I think that banks may use it to consider risk in lending. If it's a new patent, it may be something that's more difficult than something that is either an innovation on a current offering, or another commonly known product or service that might just be, we're going to open up in a geographic area that this type of service may not be as readily available.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about hamburgers, right?
Right.
Cheeseburgers. Everybody has, that's me. Everybody has, there's McDonald's, there's Burger King, there's Wendy's. One of them's square. One of them's have it your way.
One's flame grilled.
One's flame grilled. So even though you're talking cheeseburgers here, they go out of their way to disseminate how their burger's different from the other burger.
Yeah, and I think in our next episode, we'll get into competition a little bit, and I'll use that example.
Okay, beautiful. Hey, we're out of time. Thanks so much for tuning in. Jack Terrill, Executive Director at Wentworth Economic Development Corporation. My guest, Ed Miles from Small Business Development Center. Guess what? We're gonna do another episode because we only got through 5 out of 10 on the business plan. So tune in for our last episode of Season 1. It's called Plan Your Work, Work Your Plan. We'll see you in a while. Thanks.